Hello from Skid Rose Racing. This is my wife's 1991 Mazda Miata, and I was going over it for a drift event we're going to take it to soon, and decided that I was going to do a little something to it, slight little mod. So I thought, why not use the video internet services provided by YouTube to show what I was doing. Maybe someone will think it's interesting, maybe someone will think it's helpful, maybe someone thinks it's dumb. We'll see. So the mods on this car from the back to the front are polyurethane differential bushings, welded factory diff, new driveline that has serviceable U-joints. The original U-joints were kind of hammered in there, so you couldn't really mess with them, and they were pretty loose, so got a new driveline for it. What else? Inline handbrake, hydraulic handbrake. There's an old video about that I made. If you go back to the garage time playlist on my channel, you can find that, and it shows everything I use for it and things like that. The other thing is Recaro seats, which those are nicer than we meant to get for it, but they were available and we knew they'd fit and all that. I made a half roll cage, 4-point roll bar thing, and cut the knuckles. There's a very old video I made about that. It's pretty low production quality, but it shows what I did. If you look back on my channel, I think it's in the garage time playlist, you'll find it there. And so yeah, those cut knuckles. And lastly, Raceland Ultimo coilovers. And the Ultimo part, it means that they make it go lower, which, this being a car that we specifically had for using on a drift track, I wouldn't have done that again. Being low looks cooler, of course, I'm not going to ever deny that, but I'm going to show you some reasons why that's not quite right and what we're going to do to give it a free upgrade with some stuff I have laying around. So it's probably not going to make it perfect, but I think it will improve it, and I think it's worth doing. Perhaps the internet thinks it's worth watching the process of. Stay tuned. So what we have here is there's been some tire rubbing in there, which isn't the end of the world, but it is kind of chewing our tires up. And this fender, the other one's not nearly as big of a problem, but this one's been messed up since before we got the car, and it has some sharp edges and kind of can't really get it out of the way. So obviously I can just adjust these to make the car taller. However, I can only do that so much. You see, the suspension has its amount of travel, which of course is multiplied by geometry and things, so it actually has more travel than that. But well, there's a bump stop in there, sorta. I think they're kind of cheesy, but they work. So anyhow, if I just raise this up, what's going to happen is, or too much, what's going to happen is the car is just going to top out at full droop all the time. So rather than do that, I'm going to space it up here about a 1/4 inch, which I think is the thickness of the material I have. And I still have enough stud on these top hat things to make that work. I've seen other people do it pieces of steel or whatever, or I think you can buy something, but I'm just going to make it. And that will work. So what that will do is take my cycle of travel and move it downwards. So this will actually hit the bump stop or the bottom of its travel, because like I said, I'm not even sure what's in there anymore. Maybe just raw dogs and there's something in there. They're cheesy, whatever. But it will hit the bump stop without going as deep into the fender well. So it will at least reduce this. The other thing is, if you look at the suspension angles, there's really not a whole lot of control arm angle going on. We haven't driven this thing in a minute. So that will also make it a little more like the factory ride height geometry-wise. Well, and just ride height-wise. And ultimately, I could still do that, thread these down if I wanted it to still look the same, and it will just bottom out, not as high up. So that's probably not explained the best, but that's kind of what we're going to be doing, and it's going to cost me nothing. So another thing I want to keep in mind is I made some limiter things for the steering rack. I'm going to check those out because it's been rubbing there more than I remember. And it's just barely touching that brake line hose. So gotta make sure we're all in ship shape there. Those probably just got crushed from like, you know, a season and a half or whatever running it. So we're going to get it dialed. Oh, and there's the cut knuckles. Probably not the best light to see them. We'll show them some more. Those things are doing great. So here's an example of what you find in spending like over twice as much money, or roughly twice as much money on your coilovers. These are BCs that I've had on this car for quite a while, since before I started drifting it. And yeah, they seem to be holding up really, really well. But the main thing is, you have your preload here, which is like the only thing I can adjust on the other springs. That extra little coil thing is not a progressive thing on the other coilovers. That is just a helper spring, which keeps this from coming unseated. These don't need it because they're just set up better or something. But that never comes loose with the amount of preload that I have on them, which is what they came with. But this down here, we have another locking ring. And this actually moves. So I've actually raised these up a little since I first put them on. I originally just had them all the way down because it was like a daily and stuff. But now it's raised up a little bit because I was getting some of the same rubbing up here as before. And of course that right there, same kind of thing. I have some limiter things that aren't quite right. I probably smashed them again. But there's nothing else that hits besides that smooth metal there. So it's not the end of the world. Get to that later. But yeah, essentially this is going to have a cycle of travel. It's going to bottom out. We're going to take that same cycle of travel. We're going to move it downwards. So now it will bottom out without going as high up into the fender well. And everything works better. And on this particular car, because it's McPherson and stuff, the control arms were actually not at the best angle before I brought it up a little bit. And I also did some roll center correction with this SLR half kit thing. But I have a video about this car too. But anyhow, that's just a comparison of what I'm going to be doing basically for free on the other car. Let's get this show on the road, shall we? So it's very frustrating to me that this hits here. I remember this happening. It's been a while since I touched this. So initially I thought I was being stupid to not put it the other way. However, it sticks out a little more with the nut and the other end of the bolt. And with this cut knuckle setup, this will hit that if I don't have it in this direction. So tie rod's coming off. Probably over tighten that. Well, that was awfully silly. Just silly. I'm sure that's not the best way to do it, but it's been a while and I got it out. So on the other side, I'm actually not even going to undo it from the bottom. I'm just going to push it down to slip the piece in after I make it. But it's nice to have this out so I can use that or that as a template. So this here is a piece of UHMW plastic, commonly used to make cutting boards. Actually, the Condor Speed Shop stuff on this car is made out of it, besides the aluminum motor and transmission mounts. Stuff seems to work pretty well, and I'm going to make it out of this because it's going to be a lot easier to make it out of. It's also lightweight and high-tech, maybe, but it'll be easier to work with, and
it's not gonna have a problem. And if it does, I'll put a piece of steel in there or take it out entirely. So I've begun to map this out. So I just kind of measured out about how far across that thing was, which was, I don't even remember anymore. It was freaking like, yeah, 6 inches. And I compared it to like the space that's under the car. And there was about 4.5 inches the other way. But I actually, come to think of it, I started with the bolt holes and then drew a line so I'd be on the straight plane. They're 4 3/4 apart, because that's like the most critical part. Kind of split the difference, created a center line. Saw that it was, let's see, how far across was it? I don't even remember anymore. We got 4.5. So compared it under the car with the old tape measure and all that stuff. And what we're going to do is from here kind of just oval everything out, because I know these are my ends. And then there's my points. And then oval everything out and kind of just map it out on here. And to cut it out, we'll just have the points rather than the actual big hole that goes around that. And hole saw it, drill the holes, cut everything out with the old bandsaw, and then should be pretty easy. So I didn't think everything through because I'm kind of thinking as I go. I cut the shape out, then traced it, then realized that it leaves a whole lot of gappage. So then I realized that, well, what I tried doing was I took this kind of curvy bit of this old bucket that holds some scraps, and I tried to, you know, kind of make a curved line, which was way off. And then I realized that because this is 4.5 inches on this non-bolt tabby part, I'm going to have a 4.5 inch cutting wheel and made that. Then I used the curved bits of this, went from there to the ends, and really should have done that on the cardboard first, but I'm just going to cut that out because I'm just feeling dangerous. Enough with this, then I'm just going to trace it out, cut another one, probably not show you that part, and then I'll show you where I drill the rest of the holes, and I'm going to smooth the edges on both of them with the old grinder and make them tip top. So we got the other one roughly cut, and then I just kind of drilled the holes, and then I'm going to go around with the old flat disc and then try to keep it clamped together. Unfortunately, the hole size I had wasn't quite the right size. Well, I could either go smaller or bigger, and way smaller, too small or way too big. That's what I should say. So it doesn't quite fit. So I'm just gonna until it fits. You know what I'm saying? So now things are about done. They're not quite as nice as I wanted them to be, but I didn't have the right size hole saw for that, so I made it work. And to make it look like this, I have like a cheap deburring tool with like replaceable ends and stuff, and it just kind of makes quick work of getting this stuff off. You got to be careful though, because it bites pretty hard into the plastic, so you'll overdo it if you're not careful. Also, watch your fingies. You might get your fingies when you're doing this. I probably should be wearing gloves, but you know, deburr at your own risk, dog. So there it is. We're going to put this back together more gracefully than it came apart. And when I set the car down, I am going to have to at least tape measure check the alignment because, you know, bump steer and stuff, even though this car doesn't have much of it. You may be asking yourself, why did I only do this much? Two reasons. Didn't really have any more stud to work with, and I'm not going to change those out because I don't feel like it. And I also don't think it's necessary. Moving this a 1/4 inch will actually move this more than that because of the, you know, geometric laws of nature. So if it sits too tall, I'm going to back some preload off of the spring, but I still want it to bottom out, you know, earlier than the fender. So this will help with that. It may not eliminate it, but it should make it better. Let's put it together. Well, there it is. One side's in. Hard to say how much exactly the, you know, geometric difference is going to be. Probably not a ton. I mean, it's probably going to be like less than 1/2 inch is my guess, or maybe around there. But yeah, it's going to be better. This was actually a lot of effort, so, you know, maybe I should have just bought plates that are probably made, but I made these for free. So let's see how quick I can do the other side. Oh yeah, light. Look at that. It's probably not the best place to put those, but whatever. So it's gonna stand like a goofball, and then you can just plop that thing right on there. And just like that, that side's in. I only have to take the strut out of the other side for measurements. So I guess if these exist on the market, they're that easy to install. But you know, there we have it. If they ever create a problem, I'll just take them out, and then I'll be embarrassed about this video. Well, got it done. I didn't take measurements before I did the work. Oh, when I bent the fender, careful. Because by the time I decided I was going to do all this, it was already in the air, and I wasn't going to put it back down because that's a pain. So it's back down now, and maybe we'll give her a little test drive, and then in the future, I might review how it does on the track, but it's probably not super exciting. But let me know how you feel about this video and stuff.